So you've been so busy this conference.
I know.
Jeez. That's very cool. Start? Yeah. Yeah. This way Melissa will have plenty of time. Just, that's fine. Good morning, everybody. My name is Terry Raps, Dr. Terry Raps. I am from the Philadelphia area, and I am here today. Actually, my topic changed a little bit, and I wanted to incorporate some other things into my conversation about culturally responsive pedagogy. Now, I know so many of us are really truly involved in that idea of culturally responsive pedagogy, and it's vitally important. And so what I wanted to share today is actually a compilation of work over 3 different colleges and universities. To be totally transparent, I am no longer in the teacher education programs. I'm no longer teaching in any colleges or universities. I now have a private practice where I work with families to help them improve their communication, resolve conflicts, behavioral types of things. And at the same time, I have found that that area is also in vital need of the idea of understanding culture, of understanding just so many things about differences and actually how we are more alike than we are different, but our differences, as subtle as they are important in how we respond and react to one another. But today I'm really going to talk about 3 different programs. One at Chestnut Hill College, where I taught for many years, one at Widener University, and the last at Penn State University, Abington. Basically, they were all the same model. However, at Chestnut Hill started in 2011. I brought it to the college where I said, okay, our students are going to go to this particular school, and we're going to do these things. Let me go on from here. So obviously, one of the issues is that it has suggested that our teacher candidates are just not prepared to teach in urban settings. And where I live in the Philadelphia area, all of the colleges and universities I've worked in are within a few miles of urban settings. So most of our teacher candidates are placed for some sort of teaching experience in an urban setting. And they have it, the teacher candidates, as well as faculty and staff, recognize and say our students are not prepared for those experiences. Haven't been. So we've just failed, okay? And that's been talked about. So I'm not even going to talk about incorporating that because we know that. The biggest thing that we found was that our teacher candidates didn't truly understand their own biases. They didn't understand their own cultures, in fact. And so they were underprepared. to negotiate and understand any differences between themselves and where they were going to be or could possibly be placed in their teacher preparation positions. So they didn't have the tools and the techniques to work through any of these changes. They were anxious, okay? Teacher candidates are anxious to begin with, right? So let's just face it. They're going, oh my gosh, I'm going to student teach. You're going to be fine. Just keep doing what you're doing, okay? But when we said to them, you're going to be in an urban setting, that anxiety level went through the ceiling. They were unsure how to address the emotional needs of their prospective students. Quite honestly, they were unsure how to respond to their own emotional challenges because of the differences. The greatest thing is that most of the teacher candidates that I have worked with were not securing positions in the suburban districts that they had anticipated that they were going to walk into. Well, I went through this school district. I'm going to walk into a teacher. I know people here. I know people. Do you know how many people know people? Right? So when a teacher candidate says that, and I say to them, I know people too, but that doesn't mean that you're going to get that position. There's how many other people that know people. Okay? And quite honestly, that's not where the real need is. The real need is in the urban communities. And so it's time for faculty and staff, teacher preparation programs, and for you to step into this changing situation. And honestly, I say changing, it's not really changing. It has always been this way, right? In Philadelphia for many, many, many years, you had to live in Philadelphia to teach in Philadelphia. So they were not getting a lot of teacher candidates from Philadelphia. The teachers were not readily available. Anyway, so let's go into this. The teacher preparation programs, the idea was to that they would become supportive and provide the experiences in an urban setting, in a placement where the children, although they may have looked and sounded different, because most of the teacher candidates, let's face it, that I've worked with, are white, middle-class women. Plain and simple. And the positions that were available and continue to be available are not in the suburban districts where white, middle-class women are coming from. They're in the urban placements, okay? And if you look in the Philadelphia School District in particular, there are a number of people of color who are teaching in the district, but a majority of the teachers are white, even today. And the people of color are teaching in the neighborhoods that they grew up in. So they knew the culture, they grew up in that culture. So I don't want to say they had an easier time, they didn't, but they had a totally different perspective. So when we put our students in our teacher candidates into these placements, we really looked for mentor teachers who knew the community already, who were part of the community, and we placed our teacher candidates with these individuals so that they could not only get a flavor of the community through the children, but through their mentors. We also, and I'm not going by the whole PowerPoint because there's too much information that I want to just kind of give to you as a whole. So what I'm saying to you is in each of the situations at Chestnut Hill College, at Widener University, and Widener did not use the Philadelphia School District, they used Chester School District. And at Penn State Abington, we put our students with teachers who knew the community, who were part of the community already as much as we possibly could. That's not to say that every teacher, mentor teacher had lived in the community or whatnot. But we put them with people who were experienced, truly experienced in the community where they were teaching. They were not new teachers, in other words. Okay? We paired our teacher candidates up with people in the community. So it might have been someone who worked at the library, someone who worked at or was in the school as a paraprofessional, or something, the grocery store even. And part of the whole immersion of this, each of those experiences of the 3 colleges and universities was they were immersed not only into the school, but they were immersed into the community where they were expected to spend time with families. They were expected to spend time perhaps at the library. They took walk-arounds the neighborhood, which was mind-boggling for so many of these young women, the young women in particular, the young men as well. One of the things that was recommended actually by people in the community and mentors was one way for the teacher candidates to actually become more connected to the children was to find a way to use children's literature as a means to show who they were themselves, the teacher candidates, but also to use books about children, about events, about things that were going on in the world that incorporated the culture of what their placement. So in the urban settings, we had so many different cultures that were incorporated: Hispanic, African American, Muslim, Hindu, all things that many different ideas, right? And so part of their research in their program was finding things that were specific to the children that they were working with. And what came out of that was when our students were so much better able to communicate with the children and their mentors. So these are just a couple of examples. In the Philadelphia School District, I actually had my fingers in the classrooms at five different schools. 2 of them were with Penn State, the other 3 were with Chesley Hill College. And then we had 3 actually urban suburban. They had the minority populations that matched those in Philadelphia, but they were in a suburban area. One of them is in Bensalem, 2 of them in Abington, and then Stetzer Elementary School is part of the Chester School District, and the school is literally across the street from the university. So Widener University is in Chester, in the middle of an urban setting, so surrounded by. So let's see. Also incorporated into the teacher preparation programs, all 3 of them, different things, but all of them had professional developments. So we had trauma and education, and these are just some examples. I'm not going to read them. You're quite capable of that. Literacy workstations, which was great. We actually talked to them about landing a teaching job, and not only in suburban, their dream job, so to speak. It was very, very interesting to see the mindset shift of the students who pushed back. And every situation, every university, every practicum placement that we had with them to start before they went to their student teaching, every single one, there was pushback. Okay, so basically what was happening is our students in each of those colleges and universities spent 2 full days in classrooms in one of these settings with a full-time faculty, usually me, not always, but usually me, in the building with them. Okay, so I was there not only as a support for them, but a support for administration and for the mentors. Okay, I learned so much stuff, I can't even begin to tell you. It was a tremendous opportunity for myself as well. The shift that came from the start of, I don't want to go to those places. They're dangerous. They're scary. Those people don't look like me. Those were things that I heard. And I said to them, those are people. Those are children. It is their right to learn. It is your job to teach them, but not just teach them. It is your job to learn as much about each of them as you possibly can. And someone was, I think it was Dr. Brown, you were saying yesterday, you know, when people say, oh, I love all children. No, you don't love all children. How can you love all children, right? There are times I don't love my own. I mean, let's face it, right? But the point of it is that I would say, and you know, if I ruffle feathers, I apologize. Most children want to learn.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
They want to learn and they want your attention. And the best thing that you can possibly do is to give them that opportunity no matter what. And if you don't understand the children, and if you don't understand the community and the environment that you're in, how can you be an effective educator? So that is my personal crux of this whole thing, is to step into and learn as much as you possibly can. You know, we all say the wrong thing at some time. Every single one of us. I know I have. And I know that I've insulted people not intentionally. And I've been insulted not intentionally. But if we don't know that, we can't fix it. And so it's so important for us to be able to step into that and to be able to say, you know what, I don't understand this, help me understand this. And the mindset shift of the students, or the teacher candidates, was huge. Because ultimately what happened, particularly at Chestnut Hill, and by the way, Chestnut Hill College has a total of undergrad, master's, and doctoral students, 1,200 students. It's about as big as this room. You can walk from one end of the campus to the other in 7 minutes, and you don't even have to step out of a building. You can walk from one end to the other in a building, basically. The largest shift that I saw was at that little tiny liberal arts college on the edge of Philadelphia, where a majority of the student teachers and teacher candidates were white middle-class women. Okay, and of those student teachers who, you know, the graduates then, a majority of them started out teaching in an urban setting, and a majority of them stayed there, which I think is very interesting. When you look at, you've got Widener University and you've got Penn State. Not that they didn't do, they did, but the percentage-wise, and I can't give you the specific percentage at this point. It's changed over time. Let's see. So, okay, so one of the shifts, and I talked a little bit about it, was children's literature. And it was, these are things that came to me from the mentoring teachers and from the students, the teacher candidates. And one of the things is that, you know, they felt that by sharing children's books about different cultures, races, life experiences, the teacher candidates were able to find a way to better connect with the children. What's a better, who doesn't like to sit down and hear a story, right? Even as an adult, I'd love to sit down and read a book. Reading books about children and their families who looked different, sounded different, lived in different environments. It opened their eyes, and it more than opened their eyes, it opened their minds and it opened their hearts. And that was the greatest thing to see over time. I could see the teacher candidates opening, you know, just kind of like relaxing into the situation. Now, there was fear for many of the, I mean, like legitimate fear, where I had phone calls from parents. My daughter's not going into that setting. Well, your daughter can go into that setting, or she can find a different teacher prep program. There were no options. We stood firm, and all three colleges and universities stood firm on that, for which I'm grateful. It created such lively discussions, and the children actually began to research the books that they wanted to hear and share those with teacher candidates, which was mind-blowing, especially in the school district of Philadelphia, where most of the schools do not have libraries. They do not have libraries. I have a very dear friend, and I'm thinking next year DISES might hear from the two of us. She creates libraries in Philadelphia through book donations, but that's a whole other story. I think the most important thing, and this is again for me, was they began to understand how important the shift was for the future, not only of education, but of our society in general. You know, to understand all the people around us. We don't have to like everybody, but we have to be able to live together peaceably and to give everybody the opportunity to have, to give everybody the opportunity to learn. Okay. Okay, the key findings overall. The urban placements had a positive effect. I said that. Their teaching philosophies changed, particularly with the perceptions and attitudes they had of children of color and the communities. The teacher preparation programs need to support teacher candidates, continue to support teachers. And this is old news, right? We know that. At the time that this original study was done, okay, it was still, and I have to tell you that this is much pre-COVID. So once COVID hit, and I was still working with teacher candidates via Zoom, which is a whole other ball of wax. Oh, yeah. And that was also a very interesting piece in how the teacher candidates were able to connect with the children and again, children's literature, the arts, roundtable discussions. Okay, those were ways that the teacher candidates were able to actually to connect with the children in the classrooms via Zoom and Google and all the other platforms that they use. But again, that's a whole other thing. So this is just one example of a school in Philadelphia. It was a pre-K to 5. There were approximately 620 students. The class size ranged from 25 to 32. There is one dual language class for each grade, and it was English, Spanish, and that was it. 100% of the students come from homes that fall below the poverty line, which is not unusual in Philadelphia at all. In fact, the majority of the schools have, I would say, 90 to 100% of the children falling under the poverty line. There are a few that just happen to fall in certain places, but not many. So therefore, they were, receiving free lunch and free breakfast, and that's a whole other topic that I can't even discuss. That breaks my heart. In this particular school, 99% of the students are minority, Hispanic, and Black. So 1% of the 620 students was white. So when our teacher candidates walked in, and they are white, they are surrounded by little children who do not look, sound, or have had the life experience that our teacher candidates have had. Okay, so I said before, the teacher candidates, they're in the school for 2 full days each week, fall semester, following one day of the days that they're in school, there's a seminar. We talk through things. They're required to teach small group and whole class. One of the major challenges that they had was that the mentor teachers at this point, because they were, still only 2 days a week in the classroom, the mentor teachers had a hard time giving control over to them. Nor should they have given 100% control over, but we did want them to have the opportunity to teach a full day or so. And actually, for each of them, there was a point in the semester towards not at the very end, but we did it like 2/3 of the way through, where they spent an entire week in the school teaching. Okay, so that they got a flavor of full-time teaching for at least 1 week. During that time, and throughout the semester, we were doing informal and formal observations for them, preparing them for their student teaching, which came the next semester in these same placements. So the greatest growth actually, or the explosion actually happened at the end of this 2 days a week semester, the end of the fall semester, when they knew they were going back to this placement, okay? And so over the winter holiday, the preparation that they were doing, the excitement was, we're going back, we know the children, we know the mentor, we know the school, now we get to really dive into, and by the time they were student teaching, I would say by their 4th or 5th week, they were teaching all day long. They were saying to their mentor, let us take over. We can do this. And some of them were more successful with that, obviously, than others, but everyone had I believe everyone was more successful in their student teaching because of this, because they had the opportunity to really dive in and learn about the classroom, the children, the mentor, and the time. I was not always the only full-time faculty, but there was a full-time faculty that was present at the school while the students, the teacher candidates were there. Even during that full-time week, all my other classes, which were all education classes anyway, were put onto the side, and I spent a week at the school with the students. Okay, let's see, you did that. Oh, really cool thing. One of the really cool things is that the mentor teachers also participated in a lot of the professional development with the teacher candidates. Not all of it, but some of it. And what would happen is we would invite them, we'd schedule it so that it might be on a day when the district had an in-service, and we would get permission for the teachers, rather than for them to go to the district in-service. They would come to Penn State or to Widener or whatever. And so they would have in-service there with us. And it was great. They were able to contribute so much more to the professional development than just having someone stand up there going, this is trauma-informed education, and this is, so it was really a great experience for the teacher candidates, because they were observing their mentor teachers basically model what it is to be a teacher. You're going to have professional development. Sometimes they're going to stink, and sometimes they're going to be really, really great. And these are really good because these are things that are practical. And oh wait, I learned something too. And they go back to the classrooms and they would implement things together. It was quite exciting. Let's see. So as I said before, we incorporated members of the community, the neighborhood. They volunteered their time, which was exceptional. They visited the community center, grocery stores. Some of them even went to church, which was, they were invited to go to church. And if we're talking not church during the week, they were invited to go to church on Sunday. And some of these teacher candidates took their mentors up on that. They went to, they went out to lunch. They visited local, did local events. It was very, very exciting. And the mentors, community mentors and their teacher mentors shared their personal stories. And so again, it was sharing that likeness, but also beginning to understand the differences. I just have to share real quickly, right after fall semester ended, with one of the first groups that I did at Penn State in Philadelphia, not at the school, but in the neighborhood. There was a fire, and two of the children and their grandmother perished. And it happened right at the beginning of the semester as my teacher candidates were beginning their student teaching. And they heard about it before I did, because they had this network with their mentors, right? And I'm getting phone calls, and the chair of my department is getting phone calls from the teacher candidates. And so the chair and I actually spent a day down in the school with the teachers, the student teachers, the mentor teachers, the children. I am not a trauma counselor in any way, but the fact that we showed up was huge. And that made a huge impact, not only on the teachers and the student teachers, but on the community, because they saw us there. And they were grateful just for the fact that somebody took the time, because I didn't need to be there at that point. There were student teachers. I didn't have to deal with them every day. But the fact was that we were there, and it wasn't just me. I brought a team of people with me, and it wasn't just the chair. There were other faculty who came just to be supportive for the community, which was traumatic. It was extremely traumatic for the teacher candidates, and I said, "You guys are learning by fire," because I never had that in my life in my teaching career until now. But anyway, that's just a sidebar. Okay. So basically, the teacher candidates were totally immersed in the culture of the school. They met parents, grandparents, guardians. They did schoolyard drop-off and pickup. Many of the community members did not speak English. It was just a totally different experience than what they had ever had. There wasn't a carpool line like there might be in this, okay, there was, every class goes out, they stand in line, and mom, dad, grandmom, whomever comes to pick up the kids, okay, they have to sign the paper, and the student, the teacher candidates at some point were actually put in charge of that. So that was eye-opening for them. Some of the major challenges that we had, they began to they were being challenged to think differently. And that was a challenge, right? The community was not fully prepared to accept the teacher candidates who were not actually well-versed in the cultural aspect. The geography pushed these students, every single one of these students, out of their comfort zone. It was mind-boggling for them. And the mentor teachers, as I said, were not necessarily willing to give the teacher candidates control over the classroom. And of course, as wherever you go, is that there were classrooms with very limited resources. Let's see. So one of we got feedback from so many other educators and whatnot, or the teacher candidates that, one of the things that they said is, we have to be kind. I'm just skipping through here. They need to feel trusted and empowered. The best way to do this is to build a community of the learner. And I've been able to learn how to do that now. Now, here's my request of you. And now I'm going back to the children's literature part of it. Okay, so all of that inspired me when COVID began to read children's books live on Facebook. Okay, and it has evolved into Snuggle Bunny Storytime, which is absolutely it is at no cost and my way of getting children's literature into the world. There's also a subscription, but that's not my purpose. It's not why I'm telling you this. just like Dolly Parton, my goal is to get children's literature into as many houses and homes as I can. So I'm asking each and every one of you, and I'll give you one of these because it has my contact information on it. If you or you know of someone who has written or illustrated a children's book, I would love to connect with them because I would love to be able to feature their book on Snow the Bunny Story Time. Okay, not only the book, but the author and illustrator. So I would love to invite them on as a guest. They would come on to my stream. It's a whole thing, but anyway, I want to be able to encourage people to share their stories if they've written or illustrated children's books. I want to be able to help promote new authors. I want people to see that there's so many possibilities in the world. And so this idea came from all of that cultural pedagogy, responsive pedagogy, and working with children in the different environments that I did and through my college and university teacher candidates. So that's it. That's me.
I had seen her several months.
You have?
Yes.
You have?
I saw it this morning.
You didn't know you're just so popular.
Thank you. So yeah, and these are cards. They've got the idea of the subscription on here. That's not why I'm passing this out. I'm passing this out because it's got the contact information on here. Okay, so please don't take this like, you know. Yes. It's free online. I don't know. No, you don't. No, I just, my drive did not work. So I brought my laptop. I think it should work. That's what it is. It should be okay in the other computer. For whatever reason, my drive was corrupt or something.
Stand up every hour. The nurses are married now.
Can I help you with anything?
No,
No, thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Get in your portfolio.
I will stay for, I will answer any question. I didn't even think about leaving time for questions because I had so many things that I had to spit out of my mouth.
Yes, I can end a little early so you can.
We don't have to end early.
Because after this is.
Tea time, so after this is tea time, so we're yeah. You do.
You can have it, just want to, it's, mine is actually, I just want to get it ready. Oh, everything okay?
Yeah, so, yeah, you have your half an hour, then there's a half an hour in between because there's tea time.
Oh, and then 12 o'clock, and
Then she's presenting at 12.
Hi, everyone. I'm Melissa Cuba. I'm an assistant professor of special education at the University of Maine. And I'm here to share a little bit about a study that I conducted. It's part of a mixed method study, but I really get into the quantitative in this part, which includes different levels of analyses. But before I touch on this, I want to talk a little bit about myself and my own lived experience. So I am Peruvian American. I was born in Peru and raised in the US. My family immigrated in the early 80s, and we landed in Virginia, of all places. And so I went to school in Northern Virginia and had certain experiences, educational experiences that really impacted my work, both as a scholar, as a researcher, and when I was a teacher, it definitely informed my work as a ESOL, English for Speakers of Other Languages teacher, that then added special education to that training. So I worked with dually identified students, which would be multilingual learners with disabilities. And in that work, I realized that our students, my students, multilingual learners, were overrepresented in many self-contained classes. Including Interlude, which was a program for students with emotional behavioral disorders. I would push into reading classes, which at the time we used Read 180 was the program, and almost all of the students were my students. I just recall pushing into classes to support as the ESOL SPED person and really being troubled by that, thinking, why is it that the majority of these kids are my students, are on my caseload, and it's not really proportional to the the representation that we're seeing in the school, and really not addressing the language acquisition piece, which is so important for these students. That was in essence completely disregarded until I stepped in, and so this really informs my work. So for this presentation, I'll briefly touch on the background, as well as the theoretical framework that informs this work, the research questions, the sample I used, my methods, and then some findings and implications. And some of you may have seen this in my previous presentation because this is really part of that study, that 2-year mixed method study that I did, but at this stage, I really get into the quantitative. And so what we see here is data from the Virginia Department of Education fall membership counts from 2004 to 2022. And really what we're seeing here is incredible growth in Virginia. And Virginia is one of these new destination locales, which is now coined as a community or context where we're seeing a lot of new immigrant groups moving into Virginia, other parts of the South, as well as the Midwest. And so it's really interesting what we're seeing in terms of trends of our K-12 multilingual learners. And so here in 2004, roughly about 6% or so of the total student enrollment, they were multilingual learners. And then as you see, all the way up to 2022, 14%. And so we're just seeing steady growth, roughly 3 times what would have been 18 years ago. And so the public space for these students is really interesting as we think about IDEA and state performance plan compliance, where states are required to report to federal agencies on districts who are racially disproportionately identifying students of color. And so what we know of this is that states are really allowed to determine what constitutes disproportionality by setting their own risk ratio. Federal agencies really allow a lot of flexibility through state educational plans. And so one state could say, it's okay that students of color are 3 times as likely or more likely to be represented in special education than all students. And so this really, complexifies what does IDEA mean in this context if we're not really setting accurate thresholds or standards for what we're needing to address. And in addition to that, Virginia is a unique context because with NCLB, or No Child Left Behind, they removed provisions to really support bilingual education, bilingual assessments, and really be able to support the needs of students in Virginia, these multilingual learners, as we know. And so there is federal guidance coming down from the Office of Civil Rights and the Department of Justice. In 2015, they disseminated a letter, a Dear Colleague letter of about 40 pages or so, where they clearly state what we need to do as practitioners to mitigate disproportionality of multilingual learners. And things such as including ESOL teachers or a language acquisition expert in every stage of the process when working with these students. Everything from stage 1 of our multi-tiered systems of support to ensure adequate and appropriate language acquisition services, to tier 2, when we are seeing and needing to intervene. For example, if there is a need for reading supports, there should be a language acquisition expert at the table informing those discussions and supporting the collection of data and so on. And then moving into tier 3, as we think about pre-referral, but also eligibility processes, and then after identification, most definitely including a language acquisition expert to support the continuation of that growth in language in whatever placement or setting. And so this piece of guidance is really fundamental, and I'll be touching on this because I'll be using the state to really inform the dates of data that I'll be presenting. And so how are they communicating this? Well, what we know is that there is some incongruence between what federal agencies are advising state educational agencies to do, or states to do, and then what's actually happening on the ground. We know that it's loosely interpreted as, for example, bilingual assessments should be implemented or used when working with these students based on research and federal agencies, but states can decide to not do that or include a language acquisition person, including them in the determination of resources when they think about how many teachers they need and the ratio between student and teacher in the school. And so this is really important. And so the framework that informs my work, specifically this study, is a multi-level model of intersectionality that builds on Crenshaw's work, and then Matthias, who really gets into these different levels to complexify this, how social identities or social categories really impact opportunities and outcomes for socially marginalized people. And so there are 3 levels in this framework. I'll only be focusing on level 1, which is the social categories right in the middle, and thinking about how these social categories mix and really are so complex, but also impactful when you think about outcomes, particularly for these students. And then I also draw on QuantCrit, which really emphasizes the limitations with quantitative research. We know there's a strong emphasis on quantitative in our field, but there are certain limitations and constraints. And we know that qualitative really informs and sheds light on nuance, develop a better understanding, stories of people. And so, just drawing on that to really add to the conversation. And so my research questions for this study are, to what extent are multilingual learners disproportionately represented in special education in Virginia? And then does the extent of disproportionality differ by school level? And I grouped elementary level, K to 5, grades K to 5, secondary level, grades 6 to 12, or by intersectional combinations of race, ethnicity, gender, and or socioeconomic status. And then my second question, I wanted to then see growth over time. And so this is where then I get into my latent growth curve model, that to what extent has the relative risk of multilingual learners in special education compared to non-multilingual learners in Virginia changed since state educational agencies received eligibility guidance from federal agencies in 2015. And so I wanted to see that change. Has it really changed since this piece of guidance was disseminated and brought down to our stakeholder groups? And so my sample for This analyses included participants. They were all K-12 public school students from school years 2015, so going back to that when that federal guidance was released, to 2018 in Virginia. And there were all the fall membership count data that was available. The sample included 1,284,114 students. That was grade 2015 to 16, 1,288,033 students from 16-17, and then 1,292,706 students in 17-18. Always focused on K-12 because that's really specific to this piece of guidance. And then there were 132 school districts in Virginia at the time. So thinking about student counts and what that looked like, multilingual learners represented 12.3% of students in 17-18, students with disabilities, 12.9%, and then students of low socioeconomic status, 41%. And so student data for this analysis was really included our multilingual learner status, disability, race, ethnicity, gender, socioeconomic status, which was the economic disadvantage flag for free and reduced price lunch, and grade level. Okay, so the methodology, in terms of calculating the risk ratio here, I want to present exactly what I did to create my formula. And so risk ratio, for example, for our Latinx multilingual learners, at the top you see the risk for the group of interest. For example, if I'm looking at specifically Latinx multilingual learners, they would be Latinx multilingual learners in special education. And then for my reference group or comparison group, it would be Latinx non-multilingual learners in special education. So I'm really isolating language as the variable. And so really, I also I'm informed by the work of Oswald and Coutinho, as well as Sullivan, who they draw on these like thresholds, where typically with risk ratios, when you have a 1-to-1, it's proportional or equal representation. And so they believe that there should be some wiggle room there where it's okay for it to be between 0.8 to 1.2. So anything lower than 0.8 would be considered underrepresentation. Anything over 1.2 would be overrepresentation. And then the risk ratios were used to measure how much higher or lower the probability of a group of multilingual learners would be identified for special education as compared to a reference group. So really isolating that one variable, multilingual learner status. And then for my multi-level growth model, to really look at that policy change, I wanted to see if, has it really made an impact? Like, are teachers getting this information? Has there been, anything's different since then, pretty much. And so the last analysis was really a multi-level growth model. Again, looking at the 3 years of data where it was a nested structure, where years nested within districts, the 132 districts in Virginia. And then it was a 2-level hierarchical data structure. So 3 years, 2015-16, 16-17, 17-18, within those 132 districts. And the model really allowed us to really look at change over time, which is what I was really interested in for my second research question. And then with the random intercepts and slopes were also used to allow for variability. So just kind of looking at if that may exist also between school districts. Okay, so this is what came out of the first part, the risk ratios. And I really here am focusing on those more the intersectional groups, which is, drawing on my theoretical framework and really getting more at nuance. And so here you see on the far left, race, ethnicity, and gender. At the top, Asian females. And so you have the reference category or the proportion of that population. Then you have the risk ratio. Again, 1 would be equal representation. Anything above a 1.2 would be overrepresentation. So roughly here we're seeing about 1.1. Now that's about, we calculate that or change that into a percentage, it would be 110% higher than our non-multilingual learner Asian female students who are multilingual learners. And you can see the confidence intervals there on the far right. And so just looking at all the different subgroups, right, proportional, also one that is overrepresented slightly, you see Latinx females, 1.35, it's very small, above 1.2, so roughly 15.15, so that would be 15%, so a little bit there. And then when you see Asian males, for example, 2.69, that's overrepresentation, roughly by 149%, right? So just looking at that, those combinations, that's really what I wanted to get at. And then added socioeconomic status as a variable as well. And so at the bottom part, you see SES, in addition to race, ethnicity, and gender. And here you see Asian, low SES females. And there you see overrepresentation by about 129%. And so just looking at these combinations, you see a lot of variability, right, of groups of overrepresentation and even some underrepresentation. And so just kind of looking at those changes. And then this is the analyses of just the more of the one singular identity groups, just to see what that looks like. At the top, there was no overrepresentation overall. So if we were just to, let's say, compare multilingual learners to non-multilingual learners, we would say, oh, there's no disproportionality. But when we get at this nuance and add different identities, we start to see differences. And so you see school level, elementary, over underrepresentation, secondary, slight overrepresentation of 7%, and then gender, race, ethnicity, highlighting our Asian, Latinx students, where there is overrepresentation, particularly greater overrepresentation for our Asian students. So the results from my multi-level growth model, really what we saw here is that districts' size was positively associated with risk ratios for multilingual learners. That means that the larger the school district, the higher chance of them having higher risk ratios, so more disproportionality. Also, proportion of Latinx students was positively associated with risk ratios for multilingual learners compared to non-multilingual learners. So districts with higher proportions of Latinx students tended to have higher risk ratios, so more disproportionality. So these two are really important to keep in mind when thinking about that growth model. And so really thinking about the implications of this work, there's a lot to draw from. I think that there needs to be better congruence in policy from from federal to state agencies and also to our localities. With localized control, this is really complex, but we need to ensure that we are using evidence-based practices, listening to researchers, also scholars who are knowledgeable of this work, and federal agencies who are clearly stipulating what is needed to mitigate disproportionality of these students. In addition to that, when it comes to research, these data sets were, the sample was, sample over 10 or under 10 was restrained given FERPA, or is the security or confidentiality, I should say. And so it would be ideal if we could allow access to data of all sizes, including smaller populations, smaller, more rural, districts where we aren't constraining these data under 10 student sample under 10. In addition to that, we should be collecting additional data on these students. For example, ethnocultural data. When we collect data on Latinx students, we typically, in this data set, we did not collect data on race. In addition, English language proficiency would be ideal to get a better sense of that nuance and be able to provide that for our researchers and scholars. And so intersectionality really gleans a lot of insight when it comes to the complexity of this phenomenon and getting at how these students who have multidimensional identities really are impacted by our systems. And in practice, we also this data would really inform our work as we think about how we work with our students and best serve their needs, their individual needs, as students who are multilingual learners who need both special education services and language acquisition services. And so if you're interested in my equation for the growth models, I leave this here for you so you can take a look at the formula, but I just end a little early so we can have any, questions or comments or anything like that.
I have a question.
Yes.
Why do you believe, or is there data that supports the reasoning that Asian students are so overrepresented?
Well, when you, the thing is, you have the comparison group, right? When you see the group we're comparing them to,
Okay.
would be the Asian non-multilingual learners,
Okay.
students. But I do think that there is some underrepresentation when it comes to this group. It's potentially, affecting the calculation because of
Okay.
that dependent variable, if you think about it.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think that also when we think about multilingual learner status, we need to think about how much variability there is within the Asian population. They're not a monolith. There is a great deal of variability in terms of their cultures, their linguistic abilities, their educational backgrounds and trajectories. So we just need to think about more nuance and how diverse these students are. Yeah. Any other questions or comments?
Just one question about 2015,
Yes.
Virginia decided to change, right? And not collect data that they used to collect? Or have they always been kind of, oh no, we're not gonna participate in US Department of Ed stuff?
No, they have been collecting data and been reporting. They were actually cited for racial disproportionality back in 2016. A report came out on that. And that's partly why I wanted to look at the trends, but also why that's happening. That was part of the mixed methods, the other study I presented with the qualitative. So they are doing and have to report and monitor under our state performance plan indicators. This is under IDEA, but how they address that is very obscure because they have to report these risk ratios, and then federal agencies then say, like, do something. And then they say, okay, we'll try to do this. And no one really follows up or monitors that. So there's this lack of communication and like follow through. And so this isn't really being addressed. I mean, that's why we're still doing this work on disproportionality. It's not changing. And so we need to continue this and then complement it with more qualitative data, more critical theories, and scholars who are knowledgeable of this work.
Which data sets did you use specifically?
Fall membership counts.
Fall membership. From Virginia or a national data set?
Virginia.
From Virginia.
Yep, exactly.
I was trying to explain to her that we have these huge data sets in the US from which we can then use those data sets to answer some questions that we may have based on things that already exist, because she was looking at your numbers, your in. She was like, oh, that's a lot. Yeah, she didn't know a million students.
Yeah.
What we do here is like, when it's such type of study, we actually administer the tool and collect the data and then go in for analysis. Until unless it is other people from other places come together and we put the data together. So if suppose I'm conducting, I will administer it and on a population who represents that and then collect the data. So this, I was surprised, we have such a huge number, how did you do it? It's little difficult, it seems difficult, right?
Yeah, so you can, the data is actually available and it's open source. So you can go to the website and you can just pull the data sets. But what they do is they, any student counts under 10, they'll like delete or omit. And so that's the part that I would also like to look at, because also smaller contexts are different than bigger communities or districts or have bigger populations. But yes, a lot of state agencies will leave the data there for you to just grab and work with.
Because she's looking at perhaps questions that may not necessarily be addressed within that data set. Sometimes you have you set of questions, so you can just pull that data and look for answers to your questions.
So does this disproportionality have an impact on their education and other components?
Does it have an impact on?
Like on their education or their academic,
Yeah, so there's research that shows that if a student is misdiagnosed and placed in special education erroneously, it greatly impacts academic, social, and post-secondary outcomes. So if they're not receiving, in essence, what they need because they are receiving different services. And in the interviews I conducted with education stakeholders, it was really interesting because one teacher said, well, at least they're getting services. And they're not understanding that language acquisition services and special education services are two very different things.
so children, second language acquisition children, they are put into special education capacity, that is what.
It can happen.
But
It can happen, but that's what we're, you're gonna come back.
You know, types of services, but if you're misdiagnosed, then you put in more than just not.
So that is because we have limited awareness of these. 15 years ago, there was a conference where pediatricians met to talk about family disabilities in China. They said 90% of the children have learning disabilities. They took all the children with English as second language problems and put them into the group of dyslexia. It was not right. So that is where we are in awareness, but now it's come along. But still, this problem is there. And so we have to, especially the institute you come from as a teacher.
Right, and as you mentioned, the dyslexia that falls under specific learning disability, and that's actually the largest group for the student in terms of overrepresentation, because it's really hard. At times, the characteristics of language development can mirror learning disabilities. So you need someone who's really well versed. You need experts at the table. You need good tools. There's just so much that is involved, including procedures that are sensitive and responsive to the needs of these students. Any other questions or comments?
I wish that so many more of the teacher preparation programs focused more than one course or two courses on language acquisition. And I think that's probably changing. Maybe not, I don't know, but I just know that, you know, at the institutions where I've been, either you had one course in English, you know, English language learners, or you went and got your certification, and that was only like 4 courses. And to me, you know, there's got to be more than coursework when you're trying to do this. There's got to be some kind of in the field. I'm a huge in the field person, practical and clinical, whatever you want to call it. And I just feel like that's so lacking. We have, I think we waste a lot of time on things on impractical things in teacher preparation, instead of really working on the practical.
It goes on that opposite end where if you know a language acquisition expert being involved needs to understand the special education side of it so that they can see
Absolutely.
is it truly a special ed thing? Is it just language? How do you address a child that truly is special ed but also needs language acquisition?
Absolutely.
And so I think that a lot of times that's lost in how we prepare things too.
Yes, absolutely. I had the luxury of being able to actually read each of my students, and I had a caseload of about 100 students when I was working for this district, where I read every individual case file, and I wrote the story, like a narrative. This is the story of this child. And now I understand like what happened. I see where they they used the wrong tools or met assessments for eligibility purposes. There was no tier 2 or intervention typically. And things such as language acquisition experts were completely, ignored or if not included in any processes. In addition, procedures weren't really followed adequately. There were a lot of issues. And then once they were placed in special education, language acquisition was kind of completely disregarded, So then you start to see that. And, and then the language proficiency, you see it plateau at a 3, and it's consistent. And you're like, well, there it is, there wasn't really robust, explicit language instruction, systematic, as we know, explicit instruction and language merged with content. And so all these things come into conversation, right?
Did your question how did you get buy-in from the universities to get mandatory?
Thank you.
Thank you, teachers.
The teacher candidates? So I was in charge of field placement. In fact, initially, the first practicum at Chestnut Hill, as an example, they did 2 semesters of practicum, and then they did their certification. So they did general education and special education.
Okay, good.
Practicum. I was in charge of the special education practicum.
So connect.
And I said, okay, I had connections with these teachers because I had been a positive influence. And I went into the principals and said, I need 18 placements. And we do
As
this.
much better as it, like I said.
And the principals never said no to me. Okay, because basically, what they were getting, well, they had 18 teacher candidates working in their classroom. They also had a positive use cost. And that was part of the deal, and I was happy to do that when I was at Chesapeake. At Widener, I stepped into a program there that they had established. At Penn State, I was part of the the chair and I, actually the chair had been at Widener, it was a doctorate at Widener, and the doc was teaching at Penn State, and implemented this.
Also opportunities to
And
maybe
we just made it a part of.
Right.
This was
So again,
the curriculum, the organization, whatever. And so on, let's say on Tuesdays and Thursdays in the spring semester, for Chestnut Hill, no other education courses were scheduled on Tuesday or Thursday because
you ask me to go, you are yours.
No, I
No,
value
they
that
did
greatly.
not.
Thank you so
They were
much.
too hard, quite honestly.
Right.
I am.
We were basically forcing.
Well, see, and that's what.
So I would love your insight, input.
You know, in the
I'll
first.
reach out, particularly you're
It
in
was-
Virginia, which to me is like,
I
that's
swear
so
that
interesting.
this
Oh, yeah,
is where you're gonna
my mom and sister and her family.
We're in charge of.
So I
we're-
can-
we're-
Okay.
This is where you're going.
And they're
So even, even
I
previous.
know exactly where you are. Yeah, I know that area like that.
They never found one place for every student to be.
Well, maybe one time we
And
can
so that
grab
was-
coffee when
and that
we're in
has- that
Arlington
has-
in Northern Virginia.
Now, why is everything else literally across the street
one of my goals
from the university? So it was not a lot of pushback, except for the fact that, students were going to be involved with the community. They were going to be researching events in the community. They were going to have a community mentor. And that's where, that was the hardest part. And just that Hill did not have that. They were, the way the college run, you can't part of the community anyway. Because it's a small Catholic college. And, the motto is that your neighbor, so we were always doing, so that wasn't so
1 hour
much
for the
of
meeting.
an issue. But at both at Penn State and at Widener, the biggest push
And
was,
it's gonna be.
we don't want to spend out into the community, we don't want to walk out, we don't want to go to,
So now-
Okay.
ಇದು ಜಾಸ್ಮಿನ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಅದು
But here's the interesting thing, let me just say one more thing. Here's something that's really very interesting is that the neighbors would, like, we had a concert park.
And it's a poorly constructed test.
Okay, so there was no curriculum.
That's
So they
fine.
had a
Yeah.
park
Your
park
purpose is
area.
to pass the test.
And the thing
A lot of
is,
You know, how to get around, yeah.
and I would park my car and I was never afraid to walk by there.
Who's so far
And the
below.
neighbors would be outside and they'd go, Miss Teacher, you're going to school, right?
And then
Well, make sure your car's
Watch
open,
your car.
or go watch your
I
car.
had to
And go, do you have a problem with your car?
Right.
That's what the kids were afraid of. I'm gonna
So she
dispense
went
the
over
car.
and
Sometimes it's with the car.
Right. Your teacher.
She would give the resources.
I'm sorry.
So-
I have an 20-year-old Toyota.
Okay.
She wants to be in school.
When I
What should, but maybe better use her in the classroom teaching.
Well, and she also began to see where her dyslexia was presenting.
They watched out, they knew that they were going to school tonight, or
I'm calling dyslexia.
Right.
and so no one bothered.
It's amazing.
She didn't absorb
Oh my God, from that they never interact.
And I'm like,
That's right.
But they
people
always-
who say.
They're already afraid.
Have
And
some
then, you know, their parents
still.
still.
And a lot of that.
So, we'll see, she's.
I would say majority.
Majority of it.
Yeah, you'll tech.
What is your best idea?
There's some place that got lost, right? But that's, she was the only one that said, you know what?
Oh, excellent.
Once she said. In the private schools, okay, but.
Excellent. Excellent.
Yeah, it's so true. Especially in that area.
Right. So if she was married, whatever, you know, someday. But not.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
All right, that's my alarm saying, you're over it, you're done. So I, like you, Carrie, you know, because I'm always interested in kids who cannot get to libraries, right? A friend of mine retired to Arizona, no libraries in schools.
Well, that's, you know, the inspiration was coming yesterday as I was listening to everyone and I'm thinking, you were talking about lack of resources and whatnot. And I have a very, very dear friend, we taught together at Chestnut Hill College. She retired and she is passionate. She has created 13 or 14 libraries in the school district of Philadelphia through book donation.
Right.
And she labels, I mean, like, she puts the codes on the books, she gets the library built and put together. She trains somebody from the community to be the librarian, because they don't have a librarian.
I know someone who retired from Arlington and went to El Salvador and started a library on a corner, right? And after school, whatever.
I'm sure it's.
Collaborates with the gangs who run the neighborhoods, so no one knows, right? Study the only library in that town in El Salvador.
I do my presentations at church.
When you realize what.
How deep they can come.
And that's, you know, that's the thing, I was thinking about it, and I wish that I had thought about it sooner, to say to Jessica, make a proposal, let's do this together, because she goes into schools. In fact, in August, when I'm back after a couple of weeks, she's putting together a library in the school and has asked for volunteers of all of her friends, because she wants to have it ready for the start of school in September. Hell yeah, I'll go into school and work from 10 to 2 in a hot school for 3 days to get a library together, to get books into hands of children.
So, you know what I do, right? I
Google
Exactly.
version or the one on my desktop. I can just, you just have it on your desktop. I can put it in your computer. So you know what you need to stand up for your health, and go eat something or drink some tea or whatever for your health.
Yes. Lunch is soon. Lunch is soon.
No, it's right here. We've been initiatives. None of the ladies are.
Look, it's already up. I got you.
We will talk.
We will. I'm leaving tonight though.
Yeah, I know, we'll talk when we get on.
Yeah. Our airline tickets got all messed up for going home, so we are leaving tonight, like midnight. Flat white Monday. Yeah. It was,
Because you're not planning on
no, our airline tickets they canceled our flight. So we're flying from here to Frankfurt.
that. Okay,
Again.
are you going to Lufthansa?
Yeah,
Yeah.
same exact same flight.
Okay.
But they canceled our layover flight, which then in turn has canceled our whole flight. Like our Bangalore back to, because it's all linked together. So they're like, well, you don't have a flight now. So I was like, can't be.
So you're stuck in Frankfurt?
Yeah, well, so now we're flying to Frankfurt tonight, and then we're spending the day in Frankfurt, and then we fly to Paris, and we're staying in Paris before this.
Good.
Yes,
Oh, this is Jasmine, right?
yes.
Yes, it is.
It's your presentation?
No,
Oh, no.
no.
Because it's my presentation.
Yep, it's so Clara and,
After my 12:30.
yeah, there's a 12, yep. But Clara Howe and Anawai are at 12.
Yeah.
In here.
No, 12 is mine.
There's two presentations you heard.
Yours will be at 12:30.
Yours
You
is,
should do 12:30.
Mine is 12.
See, there are two presentations, 12 to 1.
Yeah, I know.
Each at 30 minutes.
That I have understood.
And yours is the second.
Oh, sorry.
I should put it there.
this is, I have to be here. This is, I work with them. I do all that work with them. Mm-hmm.
I like that.
Yeah, yeah. Lotto, Dr. Lotto and Clara Howell, they do a lot of work there. I help them. I go with them. Where do you?
I fly to Delhi on Saturday.
Yeah, we did the, in Europe.
And then I'm flying, I'll be there for until the 25th. And I leave, well, I'm not in Delhi due to the train. But my flight on the 23rd is at 2:30 a.m.
Yeah, mine's at 3:05.
So, I figured, really, I'm leaving on the 23rd, but I'm not.
Yeah. That's I'm really, like I said, the airline, they're canceling our flight and reinstating it and canceling it. So it was not pretty.
Yeah, I'm a little concerned now.
It was not-
Lufthansa too.
That flight, getting our video was fine, but my flight from Frankfurt to Paris kept getting canceled. So.
Well, is it because there's all kinds of stuff going on in Paris?
Probably.
Yeah. Yeah.
The one open now, I think you have to go in for
Did you then?
Dead giveaway, right? So,
Yes.
Honest here. I'm buying jewelry out there, sorry. I missed it yesterday. We don't need a PowerPoint. Who needs a PowerPoint? Nobody.
I want to see this jewelry.
It's outside.
No, I mean, what you bought.
I haven't bought it yet. I'm just holding it. There's jewelry outside? I'll be right back. No, you have to sit here. Nobody leave. We're gonna do really fast. Okay. Kidding. Okay. Who else is presenting with us?
May I?
I got a couple here.
Yeah.
Is it working? They don't have a conference call? Right, so if you can get on your Google, if you didn't share it with her, you can. It has to be your Google account. Right, but you had to share it with Carrie. Can you get into, do you know your Google access, you log in? It's on this. You have it on?
The language of the
In email, so go to your email. No, it's not your email.
Yeah, that's the reason.
You can log in.
I don't know, that's the thing.
That's not. No.
So,
Where else would it be?
it's not like your.
Had a chance to, I was not saying that, and I was telling them about their work. DR.
The squirrels are spinning. Squirrels are spinning. It's okay. Who else is presenting this?
Saffron?
Is it Preeti who's also presenting? Do you want to present first? We're having really difficulties getting access. All right, let's do you first, because we'll just switch the order, because our computer is just not, it's just spinning. So we'll try to get it another way. Here, we'll work on it here.
Oh, we just switched to have person.
Have her, you go first, we'll go second. But let's get your computer on.
Okay.
So it's gonna get the floor. Yes.
Oh, yeah, it's, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
Terry's sitting here.
I'll scoot down.
Change of
It's
plans.
already 12 o'clock.
Sure.
It is 12, yes.
Here, it's gonna walk.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
It's back.
I can try on my computer too. But my computer died.
Shall I start?
Yes.
Yes, please.
Do you need to use a mic or,
Yes.
am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah.
That sounds really good.
Thank you. Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. I'll introduce myself. I'm Dr. Preeti, and I'm an associate professor and head Department of Special Education, working at All India Institute of Speech and Hearing in Mysore. That's a small, it's not a small, not it's a
Yeah.
city in Karnataka, 3 hours drive from Bangalore. And we are, so I already have to run that. So,
I can sit and do my turn. Someone can push the button. Yes. Yes.
and maybe one, you just take a quick glance at-
Yes. A picture? Yes.
Okay, so this is our institute, All India Institute of Speech and Hearing. We come under the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, Government of India. So we are funded by the central government of India. And our main, next slide please. Okay, so it's an autonomous body under the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, Government of India. And we have few objectives towards which we work. One being impart professional training. So we have manpower training wherein we train students to become speech and hearing professionals like BSLP, MSLP, and special educators. So we have a B.Ed program and an M.Ed program, PhD program, and we have few diploma programs. So that is under professional training, and we render clinical services. So we cater to the requirement of individuals with communication disorders. We exclusively work with communication disorders, and we try to identify them early, intervene them early, and rehabilitate them at a very young age. For this, we conduct research, and moreover, uh, over a period of time, we have understood that creating awareness is one of the ways to overcome lots of problems. So, through public education on issues related to communication disorders such as hearing impairment, mental retardation, voice fluency, and phonological and language disorders. So, we create lots of public awareness to school teachers and the general population, nurses, grassroots level workers, Anganwadi workers, so that they are able to identify individuals who require the service, so that they can come to our institute and we provide them. So the institute has 11 departments which functions towards the rehabilitation of individuals with communication disorders. So we all work hand in hand, multidisciplinary team approach, so that we help these individuals to lead a normal life. And as I told, under manpower development, the institute offers undergraduate, postgraduate, diploma, doctoral, and postdoctoral courses. Next slide, please. So this is the Department of Special Education. It's my department, and next slide. So our department objectives are also in cohesion or in accordance with our institute institute objectives. That is manpower development. So as I told, we offer special education programs, that is bachelor's in special education. We specialize in hearing impairment, master's in specialization in hearing impairment, and diploma. We also have a PhD program, service delivery. That is we address the learning requirements of children with communication disorders in our department. We train them and we help them integrate. I will be highlighting more in my presentation over due course of time. research and public education. So research is evidence-based research as to if, efficacy of the teaching learning strategies what we use, and public education. So as I told, creating awareness amongst regular school teachers, the nurses, or college going students, so that they are aware, yes, such type of population is also there in a society who requires help, so that inclusion, integration, and mainstream become successful. That's the main purpose. So this is the objectives. Next slide, please. So under service delivery, I'll be focusing more on service delivery. See, we have been listening to inclusion and the challenges faced in inclusion over yesterday's presentations and today's presentation. And what I have learned is like, be it India or any other country, creating awareness and helping the child from a very young age will help the child to become self-sufficient in the classroom. So that is what we are aiming here in our department. So we aim at early identification, early rehabilitation will lead to better rehabilitation. So we have services for all ages and stages of education. So like for example, we have assessment, guidance and coordination of services, delivery of services and development of resources. So under the delivery of services, we have preparation for school, support for school. In this, we have a program called as Parent Infant Program, which is from birth to 2.6 years, followed by a program called as PPP, that is Preschool Parent Empowerment Program, 6 years to 3 years, and Preschool Program, 3 years to 6 years. 3 years to 6 years is the age in which we address the child's requirement, and 0 to 2.5 is the children's age. The age is given in the bracket. Then we also have, once the child goes into a regular school, we understood that they face lots of problems like addressing the curriculum requirements and not being able to read, or the parents are not understanding how to how to teach the child. So we also have services called as curricular support services, individualized education program, and demonstration of educational training. Next slide, please. Thank you. So this is our special educational assessment unit. So when a child comes, we'll not just put the child into any service. We assess the child as per the requirement of the child. So if a school-going child is not performing as per the grade, we have a grade level assessment test, wherein which determines what is the age gap of the child or the grade gap, so that we, with our help in our department, we try to bridge those gaps. Another thing is like the child might have completed preschool servicing in our department and is ready to get integrated. So we have a school readiness test exclusively to see whether the child has learned the pre-academic, pre-reading, pre-writing skills, has acquired what are the necessary learning requirements, so that he can be successfully integrated. So this is the first step of special education assessment unit, and we also other batteries of assessment recommended from other schools. Like during examination time, of the school sees that the child is frequently failing or is not able to is not at par with his learning friends or his peers. So they refer to our institute to do a detailed evaluation why the child is falling. Whether the child is having some hearing problem, or the child is not intellectually, is the child is not is below average performer. So we do a detailed evaluation. So in our institute, we have a clinical services and audiology department, speech language. So we do a complete assessment, and then we tell the parents as to what is the next course of treatment or intervention the parent can avail. Next. So as I told you, next is the parent infant program. A parent infant program. So you see, these are all children who are availing the services in our department. So 0 to 2.5 is our target group. So they come and we stimulate the child. We don't teach the child. That's the age when the child has to be played with. Has to stimulate. So in a natural learning environment, the teacher will play with the child, the teacher will sing song and stimulate. But if you see, in all these things, the parents also play an important role, because the parents have to understand how to teach the child, what are the requirements of the child, so that when they go back home in the natural learning environment, they can help the child to learn better. So our department, we go hand in hand, like a parent, teacher and the child. And we have, with all these natural learning environments and play with method, the child learns to read. So from here, if the child has really improved, the child has come up to the actual, has achieved all the skills, they directly get integrated into a regular school, in the normal school where the other children go. But if the child has not improved, we put the child into the next program called as the preschool parent empowerment program. Parent empowerment program. I'll give you a brief idea about this. In our department, we have many clients, children with communication disorders coming on a regular basis. So we cannot say no to them, or we don't say you go back and come later. No, we accommodate them in this program called as preschool parent empowerment program, wherein the teacher will be just a facilitator and the parents will be understanding what the teacher has told. So if teacher is teaching some concepts, she will give ideas how to teach it. So the parents will go forward, get their own materials and do that. Now, why this is important is like, because because when the child comes with, means he might not have the basic eye-hand coordination or sitting behavior, or is not able to attend to the requirements, no attention concentration. So we work on this areas in this program that is called as preschool parent empowerment program. So, but the teacher doesn't teach individually; she'll just guide. And this program is for a duration of 6 months. So for 6 months, they have to come regularly. They have to learn what all has to be done. And so if you see, all the parents will have their own set of teaching learning materials. These are all indigenously made. It's not expensive. They have to just get those pictures which is locally available. They have to make flashcards out of it, or they have to get some things, toys which the child like at home, and they talk about it, they discuss about it, and they enhance it. So here the teacher is giving the instructions, and each day there will be a new activity so that the boredom doesn't set in. And so for each thing, the child, for hand coordination means the parent, the teacher will previously tell the parents, okay, you get some things where the child is playing with, like beading activity or some other activities, so that the child has a hand coordination. So this is just an example. So this is called as preschool parent empowerment. This is for a duration of 6 months, wherein for 6 months they come regularly, they learn all these things, and the child is now ready to get into a preschool, which is also there in our department. And we group them according to their diagnosis. Like we group them according to children with all hearing impairment will come together, children with ASD will come together, children with multiple disabilities will come together. Means we try to grow them so that instruction becomes easy for them to so that teachers find it very easy to address, to bring about homogeneity, at least to some extent. Next slide. So this is the preschool. So the highlights of the program: parents are empowered to train their children. The first stage for entry into the preschool training service, and the duration of the program is 6 months. And the skill necessary for the child to enter into preschool is established here, wherein we develop their eye-hand coordination, attention, concentration, sitting behavior, fine and gross motor skills. So you can see the total number of the parents. With each child, the parents will be there. Here also, in the absence of the teacher also, the parent knows what has to be done next. So it's not that they are fully dependent on the teacher. Sometimes there will be parent leaders. They take the initiative of taking the class ahead. Okay, so that is one thing. And this is called as the preschool training and supplementary service, educational training for holistic development of preschool children with communication disorders. This preschool is housed in our Department of Special Education in our institute. And we have lots of children. We have around 200 children with communication disorders availing this service. They avail this service before they get into formal education training. So here we have children with hearing impairment, intellectual disability, cerebral palsy and multiple disability, and autism spectrum disorders. Morning in the Sunflower Hall, one of the madam had told ASD, that's the thing which is now So we have many children coming with ASD to our department. Now, as I told, we provide these are clients who are not basically from Mysore. They come from the neighboring districts, their neighboring states. So we teach them in the language which is native to them. So we teach them Kannada, which is regional language. We provide them instruction in Malayalam, Hindi, English, Tamil, and Telugu. So all our special educators are well versed with this language. Like we have teachers who can speak Malayalam, we have teachers who can speak Kannada, and obviously all our teachers knows English, Hindi. So if a child comes, it's not that we say, oh, this we cannot cater to the language requirement of the child and send them back. No, some of the other services always provided in our department, and if because and if we are not able to meet, at least we'll guide the parents as to what could be done when they go back home. See, for example, some parents come from north and they cannot stay for a longer time because they might be having other children who are attending a school. So to meet the learning requirements of the special child, they will come to us. We'll give them a demonstration of educational training, how to go about when they go back. So we tell them, okay, these are the strategies which you can use, and we give them for around 10 to 15 days as long as the parent is there with us. When they go back, they try to implement it. And we do a regular follow-up as to see whether their child has progressed in that or not. Okay, so this is one of the things. And so when they come to our preschool after that program of preschool parent enrichment program, they are there with us for 2.5 to 3 years, because for a child to develop a good skills, pre-reading, pre-writing, they should be with us for a good amount of time, so that then only we can see that improvement, we can record it, and all those things. So, and our main aim being mainstreaming children with communication disorders by developing their academic, social, and an overall well-being. So we are not just concentrating on their academic. We develop their social skills and a holistic. How we do that? It comes in due course of time. Who are the beneficiaries? Children with hearing impairment, children with intellectual disability, autism spectrum, cerebral palsy, and multiple disability. Children are there who we tutor. Yeah. So we have a systematic procedure for assessing the child. Now, as I told you, that 6 months program with the parents. Now, after 6 months, if the child is regular, the parent is regular, and the child has shown improvement, we will not haphazardly make the child enter into the preschool program. We evaluate the child to see how he has performed, whether there's some improvement, and so that when the child comes into the preschool classroom, he is along with that group of children and he is not lagging behind. So if the child doesn't seem to show any improvement, we tell the parents to continue with that parent enrichment program for some more time. We identify what are the gaps. We tell the parents and we give them suggestions and guidance as to how they can bridge it. And if the child has really achieved all those skills necessary for preschool, we put the child into a preschool training program. So we have a standardized assessment tool, naming checklist to assess different domains in preschool children with communication disorders. And here all the skills like pre-reading, pre-writing, what all is required. Age-wise, we assess the child. And this tool is used at the entry level and at the regular intervals for assessing the progress of the child. So it is both a diagnostic tool as well as an interventional tool. So that the teachers can continuously evaluate or assess the child to see whether the child has progressed and where the child is lacking, so that they can work on those areas. Next thing. So what are the skills we develop? Pre-reading skills, pre-number skills, pre-writing skills, cognitive skills, self-help skills, language arts, story rhymes, and all our teachers are professionally qualified, well-trained, and compassionate teachers who understands the learning requirements of the child and they meet it accordingly. So what are the other services? Now, these are educational services. So children, as we know, children with communication require an array of services. So it's not only education, a team of experts also come and work with us. We have speech therapists coming in, and many of our children require occupational therapy, physiotherapy, and all these services are available in our institute. So after availing these children are there with us for half a day. So forenoon we have half day and afternoon. So we have run the preschool in 2 batches. So after that, they go to the respective speech therapy or occupational therapy, physiotherapy, and they do it in consultation. So if a teacher finds that the child is not progressing, so they contact the respective professional and identify as to why the child is not progressing. And sometimes if the child doesn't show improvement through speech, so we have an exclusive AAC unit, augmentative and alternative communication unit, wherein they work upon the sign language component or the communication board, so that the child doesn't feel that he's left out. That's the thing we work. So these are the teaching strategies. We have play and activity based. Definitely, since we are working with children, we cannot be having the usual lecture method. So it's always play way, activity based. Teachers have this planning ahead, like at the next what they have to teach. So they tell the parents to get the materials. We have our own material set of materials, and teacher will be actively engaged. Then incorporating multi-sensory learning approach. So as we know, these children will improve with their senses, multisensory. So we give them visual input, auditory, and all our classes are equipped with state-of-the-art facility. We have smart boards. So once they see something, first we show it to them actually through the actual model. They manipulate it, they learn from it. Then we show pictures, toys, and then we related stories, related poems, and all these things, so that it becomes a wholesome thing. So we have collaborative learning, teacher-parent partnership and involvement. Very important, because sometimes a child might show very slow progress. So the teacher will tell the parent to reinforce it at home, so that he is not feel left behind, that I'm not performing according like my peers. So, and what we have understood is like when some parents will have beautiful ideas and they will incorporate it. So, over a period of time, these parents will be confident enough to train the other parents as to how to go about it. So, the parents encourage the parents, and they all come from, they have, first of all, having a child with communication disorders, they get devastated. So when they come here, they come up with low self-esteem, they have lack of confidence, they even don't know whether my child will be able to improve. But when they all work together in a group with all these services, they progress. So when they go back, we take their review. So then some of them will tell it was such an eye-opening thing, and they go back and they help others in their place also. So teacher-parent partnership and involvement, use of appropriate teaching learning materials, association with natural environment, holistic learning atmosphere, and realistic learning, because these children has to learn language from in the natural context. So that we don't stop. So wherever possible, we take them to the natural environment. They explore it, they learn from it, get back to the classroom learning situation, and we do that. That's the thing. So this is the preschool training. So if you see, as I told you, how parents and the smart board thing, and as I told, we have children with cerebral palsy also. That green color chair is a modified chair. Modified chair means we have custom made it according to the requirement, because these children tend to have this. They do not have motor control, so they tend to droop or they tend to fall like this. So that they will not be able to hold the pen, and they are not able to have that hand. So what we do is like this is custom made. We have made it by telling the carpenter as to what is the requirement. So when the child sits, there is a flap, and the child the leg is kept inside, so that there is stability in the leg, and then there is hand rest. So here he gets the right support to at least sit, pay attention, and go on with his activity. So that's the way we do. Otherwise, we always sit down, because that brings the teacher close to the children, and that physical proximity does makes a difference. Like they feel wanted, teacher can give individual eye contact to the children, they know whether they are paying attention or not. So these are small things, but very classroom atmosphere, but sometimes it goes into an informal thing also. We put the mat down, the parents also don't feel bad, and they comfortably sit and learn. Next slide, please. So, yeah, so as I told, it's not only academic where the children we train them. We want them to be, as I told, one of our objectives is for mainstreaming. So in mainstreaming, if they're just academically oriented and not participating in all the activities, they'll be left behind. So right from our preschool, we make them active participant in all the activities within our institute as well as other schools when they organize. So if you see, these are all the activities that participate. So this is an example. This is a program called as IKEM that was conducted by a regular school. Means that was a part of this G20 summit. So those principal came and told that they want our children with special needs to be with their normal children, and they conducted an activity, the seed balls, wherein they these both the children, group of children played together with mud, and they put seeds into the mud and they planted at different places. So, and it was very beautiful. The acceptance with the normal children accepted children with special needs was very eye-opening. They were very curious to know how to communicate with them because they didn't know. They welcomed them. They all sat together and they did. So it was very fun to see how our children did very well in that program. And this is another program where a non-government organization came to us and they wanted to conduct some activity. So we allowed them, and that was the thing. So the recent 21st June is as an International Yoga Day. So our children every year they perform in an ashram, and this is the thing. So in all cultural programs, we ensure that our children participate both at the regional level, the state level, as well as the national level. So we train them ahead. So that is a part of our co-curricular activity. So we have co-curricular, next slide please. We have co-curricular wherein all these skills are developed. We have physical exercises, craft, dance, drama. So everything is, and we some children if they can't do it, we modify it as per their requirements so that they are also participant in it. Next slide please. This is a unique thing. Most of our parents come from a low socioeconomic background. So they cannot afford to buy books and toys on a regular basis. So this is library of books and toys. We call it as Lego toy. They become a member of that. It's also in our department, and they become a member. They issue the toys and they play with it, and they return it back and they take it back. So everything goes hand in hand. Next slide, please. See, teaching learning materials. We have well equipped teaching learning materials. The teachers borrow it for their classroom teaching purpose. Next slide. This is a thing called as use of music for educational readiness. Children with autism and who enjoy music, they come here, they play the musical instrument and they learn through that and they enjoy it. Parents also enjoy it. Next slide, please. So this is for sensory integration. Next slide. And we enrich the parents. So our parents are never left behind. We keep them hand in hand. We enrich the parents with different types of topics, mental well-being and how teaching strategies. So we collect our topics in which they want some ideas and we call professionals and we conduct it. So this is on a regular basis. This is some unique program called as Parent Help Parent Program. Parents who have struggled, but they have successful. They know how the journey is and what it to be a part of the journey. They come and they discuss with the other parents to build their motivation and how to go about with the next step. So this is a very good program wherein, see, these are all passed out parents who have gone and they have come and they are discussing what they can do with their children so that they can be successfully integrated. Yeah, next slide. So what is the outcome? Why I'm telling is like when we have the systematic plan and all these things, our children get integrated successfully. So every year we celebrate the preschool graduation program. So you see, this is the statistics which I show. Every year we have these children who are passing out, like 108, 78, 82, 108 children, 86. These children are ready. They avail 3 years of our service in our department, and now they are ready to get integrated into a regular school setup with a systematic training. This is just the data for the previous past 5 years. We have been doing that since many years. But I thought I'll just give you a brief idea about it. So we celebrate this success by celebrating the preschool graduation. Next slide. So this is they wear their gown and everything and they are formally graduated. Next slide. See here. And we go fly high. Parents feel very happy. Next slide. Yeah, so these are few of the assessment tools which is available in our department. As I told, T-PASS test for pre-academic skills. This is a standardized tool. When teachers use it to see whether the child has attained all the requirements, necessary learning skills, so that they can and we give a report which they can give it to the school. Next slide. So we all welcome to our department. So next time come to Mysore, please come to our institute and visit our department. And we are open for collaborations. So this is just a slide. It shouldn't matter how slowly some children learn, as long as we are encouraging them not to stop. Thank you so much.
You're bringing group to Mysore?
Yeah.
Right, Elizabeth?
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, I do too. All right, Carrie left us, so that was great. Thank you for running this slide deck. Wonderful.
Oh, my, you did much.
Nope, we're good, we're good. Just a minute. Maybe. There it is. All right. Let's do it this way. I got it. Start. Let's do this.
All right. Okay, so we are going to talk about the 1 week long program that we do every year.
Yep.
In a school in Panama that is, I would say, inclusive from its inception and newly dealing with actually having a more systematic inclusion. All right. Our purpose, the intersection of teaching English as a second language, because all of the students are in a Spanish-speaking country. The upper class is completely bilingual.
I'm going to interrupt you for 1 second. So this is Anna Lato and I'm Clara Howe. For those of you who don't know, Anna and I work together at Marymount University, and her background is English as a second language, ELs, and my background is special education, and we know the intersection is strong. And that's kind of the impetus behind the work that we do and continue to do in various places. And this is one we're extremely proud of.
Right, so we provided data by having our students learn to give tests and go down there, and we tested all 90 first graders. Then we took data on its impact of giving the school that data, and we're going to talk today about the long-term intervention and things that are still to be done.
I think we'll skip that one.
Yeah.
There you go.
All right, so the quantitative data was the testing. The qualitative data is our students.
IDELs. No,
Yeah.
DIBELs. We did the DIBELs, right?
The DIBELs and, as needed, the IDELs. When the student didn't know English, we had their student teachers, pre-service teachers, do journals and analyze them, and that's a published study. And then we observed classrooms, conducted PD, right, professional development, and demonstrated, the students learned to demonstrate the teaching of TESOL. And this 2023, we gave back just the faculty. So they had to work in pairs to assess the student because they didn't know Spanish, right? So there are all sorts of questions about the characteristics of the student. And then when the students got stumped, right, in English, then they would do the Spanish test too, so we had more data.
And we're talking about our students.
Our students.
So our students weren't fluent in Spanish. So it was, and I'll go a little background on the school. So the school we worked in, they teach all classes in English and Spanish after 3rd grade. Kindergarten to 3rd grade, they are working on English in the classroom, teaching English.
but it's primarily taught in Spanish, so it's a little back and forth. And by third grade, everything is pretty much in English with some Spanish. So it's how they run the school. So these students that we're testing or that we're looking at are brand new. COVID had just ended, so some of them had never even been in school when they were 5, 6, 7 years old. And the teachers had no idea at the school what levels the students were at. And so we were asked, this was their needs assessment, we were asked by the school to come and help them do these assessments as quickly as possible so we could get these students into the reading supports that they needed, faster. They only have a limited staff, and so we were able to do all of first grade and some of second grade, I believe, at the beginning, and then they had that data within a week. We were able to give it to them, and we'll tell you what happened after that. So
There's the data.
there's our data, yeah. So our data basically demonstrated that most of the students in the first grade were well below, and that's this number right here, except in this classroom where they were advanced. So we knew that in that classroom, the strategies that we were going to be sharing were going to be different from the strategies we're using in others. We shared all strategies with all of the teachers there. In our own students, because we talk about students, it gets confusing.
Candidates, we'll say candidates.
So ours are, you're going to make me say candidates, it's going to be tough. The teacher candidates. The teacher candidates were also learning all of this at the same time. So it's a very interwoven, week-long, intensive program that we support at Marymount. So, go ahead, Sarah.
The results were they immediately put students into groups by their reading level. Changed. And they went on to test all the kids in third grade themselves using it.
We taught them how to do it, so then,
Immediately.
right, so we can leave.
Yeah.
That's the goal.
Yeah.
We don't need to be there, right?
We are so grateful for your help and input. Tests are truly making an impact here on how we teach and what we do. Teachers are practicing differentiation in small groups. And this is important because the literacy was addressed and the English at first with the assessment in this kindergarten, first grade, second grade. The TESOL was addressed as demonstration with experience. Come to what's happening next is the teachers had so much anxiety because they didn't know Spanish and they didn't know how to teach English. And so we taught them Spanish using the books and the tests
That they were going to use in the classroom.
They were
So fun.
Yes,
Can you talk about specific?
teaching English as speakers of other languages. And all of this we did, either the Spanish needed to teach with a picture book or to do the assessment. That's the only Spanish they learned. Because they were beginners, okay, and this is a reference for where our books are. Yeah, and we'll give that, we'll give that to anybody who needs it. So from a journal, I had planned out materials based on my experience trying to learn Spanish. And the conversation with my groupmates. They were all learning Spanish together, right? And I had the chance to learn more techniques and strategies when working with the students of unique learning needs in the classroom. So they learned, and then they went there, and then the group, we met forever, right? After every day, we would meet for hours.
Reflective, yes. And what I love about these statements is that what was very, very relevant throughout the entire experience is that they were experienced with what the students they were assessing were experiencing. So their students are learning English, they speak Spanish. Our students are practicing in Spanish to teach English. And so when teachers recognize and understand the struggles that a student is going through, they change the way they teach. It's amazing because then where we live in Arlington, Northern Virginia, we have a very high Spanish population. And these are all teachers going into schools. And now their confidence level was tremendous. They felt like even though they didn't understand, they didn't have that language, they had some of the skills to sit down, learn, and work with students from any various backgrounds. And goals as teacher educators is to make our students as confident in the classroom and comfortable in the classroom as possible. So here we are, these teachers just, and we heard back from teachers as they went back, this happened 2 years ago, that this experience completely changed the way that they teach, right? Because they had to immerse themselves in another culture and language, and now they understood what the student walking into their classroom felt like who didn't speak. And where we live, we have 180 languages in Fairfax County, homes 180, right? So, Spanish is a predominant, but we have many, many languages. So it just changed that, it was that cultural shift. And we talk about cultural sustainability. This is a really big aspect of their learning.
They no longer panicked.
Yeah, that was
Student
awesome.
is talking to me, and it's not about the books that I have in my hand or the test. They had strategies. Go find someone. Go find me. And they no longer avoided the students. They knew that Ana Rosa did not speak a word of English and she was problematic. They no longer avoided her. Okay, so we empowered them to pick books that we have these in Spanish, right? And they put the books in English that were, oh yeah, that's the one I learned in Spanish. It only has 12 verbs, right? The Shapes in the Sky, that one has. So they were picking the easiest books, a level which in a readability formula, you don't get that. Okay, so next one. And we left the books that we used to demonstrate with the teachers in the classroom, with our folders, with the materials. So here they were.
Doing multisensory lessons, right? So the sky one, sorry to interrupt. So the
Yeah,
sky
go
one,
ahead.
the kids did clouds, they looked in the sky. And then we did a science one on static electricity with the balloons. And then I don't see there's Mama Cat.
They're acting it out. Here's the
They're acting.
box.
Who Hops is their favorite. If you don't have any, Who Hops is the best book on the planet for teaching multiple languages. Because it's simple.
Just,
Yeah.
the TPR book where they are jumping and acting and crawling and whatever. Okay, so the teachers gained something because they came to us, not their supervisor. Right, so they could just break down and say, I don't know what to do with Ana Rosa, and then I established a relationship. And they saw total physical response, which is I say jump, you jump. I say
Hop, you hop.
and then they saw language experience approach. They saw substitution. And they had immediate use. Tomorrow I can use this book, Mama Cat, they love, and Who Hops. And then PD training was both ESL or SPED, and then follow up based on, she's wonderful, what do you want to learn? Then the next day we would do the PD training on what they wanted.
Sometimes up until the middle of the night.
Yeah.
1 week. You have your list of things most people ask for. Classroom management is number one, I can tell you that. 8 years I've been doing this. Classroom management is fix them. I can't. But I can give you some tools. We can try it, right?
So I just want to get, because this is important in our follow-up. The ESL K through 2 was run completely different than the ESL 3 through 12. In fact, the K through 2 was an ESL specialist. The assumption was everybody's going to learn English, know it, and then from 3 to 12, all the classes will be
We don't
bilingual.
need any help.
So no differentiation, no pull out or push in. So a kid who was way above, a kid who was way below, and there's 2 ESL directors. One here, one for the other grade, and they didn't talk that much, they were too busy. Whereas special ed, in the years that we've been there, they now have this wonderful master's degree person. She has pull out, she has a parallel program, she's got push in, she's got pre-service teachers in classrooms from the local college, right, doing the push in. And everyone can come to her, and she also teaches 1 or 2 classes. She pull out so that she is one of them. And this makes a difference with what we have observed now when we went back to observe classrooms only, is that pre-K 2, there's nobody really, very few people, you can just go push, because that means we're halfway through it.
I got you. in
Very
10
few,
minutes.
we came back, very few people were referring students to the special ed unless they had blindness or whatever. 3rd through 8th grade teachers referring, right? This kid's not doing anything in the English class, whatever. And they no longer were assessing English with the dibbles or the whatever. They were gonna have their own test, which hadn't materialized yet. And they just decided, which was good, they wanted a book that would be the same. So they adopted this Basel. It's not an ESL text, it's a Basel for 3rd through whatever.
12.
That had no differentiation. And it wasn't an ESL text, it was a Basel. So problematic, so what did we see? That there were many referrals in the older grades. And we came in to a school that, once we did that testing, they increased her staff, they made new facilities.
They gave her a new wing in the school.
And so we went in there next
They don't do
month.
that in the US.
No,
Shocked.
it was just, it was wonderful wing. Okay, next one. So we came in with a plan like, we trained all this ESL, we demonstrated all this ESL, we're gonna go in to K through 2 and see, how they're implementing it, and there's no silent period and there's no problems. We got there and the ESL directors and the special ed director said, we have all these kids struggling in the upper grades, can you please help us with that? So we took our ESL tally that we had made based on research, what we were going to observe that was going well, and we just added the SPED behaviors, right? And so you went into a classroom only for those kids that all were struggling, like go to so-and-so's classroom, go to Ana Rosa's teacher classroom, observe for an hour. And next slide, they need a lot more PD, right? Because they're referring kids as special ed that have an ESOL program. Or that what we noticed is that it's both, right? So they were not on task, they were doing avoidance, they were frustrated, they were also low ESL, right? And they had no services for ESL. So we continued, we did, again, what are your needs? We did a PD for differentiating an ESL, specific things that tomorrow I can use in my classroom. I mean, they were like, can we get a copy of that? Can we get it? And then she did the next day, the SPED PD for the older kids who are struggling, what you can do in your classroom, because that's what they were saying. It's like, I have so-and-so in my classroom, they don't pay attention or whatever. And not only the below, there was a child in 12th grade who was so far above everybody else, right? Because he's in classrooms where people don't know English, he's bored to death. It was, the only reason why he was paying attention in class was because he could not play football and go to practice unless the teacher said he had been paying attention. And I mean, they gave us specific things. There was a child, 6th grade science teacher said, I can't do anything with Juan Manuel. Look at this. I can't read what he's writing. And we immediately said, he's using Spanish to write in English, like he wrote the word table. T-E-V-L. Table. And the science teacher who had no ESL training and no place to put a kid with ESL needs
Special ed.
put him in special ed. Look at this. I can't do anything with this. And there was 12 answers which I could read.
Yeah, we
They
figured
could
it
read
out.
because that child didn't know. So what we don't know, right? We helped him a little bit, the teacher, if what's going to happen next year.
Right, it's going to next year. That's a lot of information thrown at you in 15 minutes. Obviously we hate what we do. Just awful place to be. But what we're working on is that sustainability with this school and the other school, several schools there. And this particular school has been extremely open and welcoming to the ideas. Panama struggles with special education. There aren't special education structured programs for teachers. So they're still working on getting that together. So they're looking they want the quick fix. And of course, my first answer is there's no quick fix.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of work. But you have to have administrators and teachers and counselors, and I explained, we talk about that. And the administrators in this particular school, they want to make every child as successful as possible. So when you run into that situation, it's like, oh, so you don't mind staying up till midnight putting together a PD that you didn't know you were gonna have to do the next day, right? But I wanna go back to what our students also gained from it. Our pre-service teachers, again, they come out with a confidence that they would not have gained in some of our classrooms in the States. They're put into situations that are stressful and they are problem solvers. And that confidence was so evident by the end of the week, we didn't even need to be there. And that's the point.
Yeah.
We just walked around and observed a little bit and they just were doing their thing and making, and relationships with the students and the other teachers there, and they are all still in contact. I mean, Carrie's been multiple times. She graduated from our program and she went back with us last year on her own dime. She paid for the ticket to come down and stay and work with us. So we've been extremely fortunate to have this win-win situation.
I want to say two things.
Yeah.
Experience before theory. That's the way we work. They got 3 credits. They came in, and within the second class, we were teaching them Spanish. They were experiencing being a language learner. And they were learning it to go on April 1st to Panama and assess and teach.
Right.
So there had been millions of questions compared to the class that was talking theory and giving examples. Number 1. So experience before theory. And for the teachers down there too. They've experienced what happened in the ESL classrooms that our students were teaching. And then I want that. Everyone's participating. Number 2, attraction, not promotion. They were attracted to what we were doing and what we could give them. We weren't promoting anybody's theory. We weren't promoting Marymount. We were saying, we have something to offer, and they're like, I want it, right? So this whole thing, we weren't selling anything.
No.
And, flexibility, right? We came there and all of a sudden they want something else, and we're like, okay, after dinner, meeting.
Now they want family interaction ideas, so,
Yeah.
That's one of
Yeah.
the next things we're working on.
Yeah.
But any questions on the project before we have lunch? Yes.
I was curious about the DISES, right at the beginning, why you chose DISES, and was there any differential diagnosis that you had to do while
Sure.
administering the DISES? Because from my understanding, the students didn't really know English. Have they had the instruction, the phonological phonemic awareness
They've had
before they did?
Some had and some had not ever even seen an English word.
Yeah.
And we played games with them. We did not stress the little ones out at all. It was funny, silly, and we asked, if they knew any of these, and some could do the whole thing and some just played with us like there was nothing. The reason we picked DIBELS, here's why. The University of Oregon, it's free.
Right.
Free. The second reason is they have DIBELS that's been research-based in Spanish called IDELS. So if you're still worried that a student isn't reading in their own language, right? So we could do DIBELS or IDELS. I've done both with students, especially when the special education director said, hey, I just not sure. Can you do an assessment? Sure, use me, I'm here. I'm happy to do it. So that's why we use the DIBELS, because they do have, it is a norm reference test in Spanish, right? So.
Because I know it's time tests and.
It is.
Students
Yeah.
translating.
Which is why they don't need
the
the-
fidelity of the test.
Well, the students really don't, we gave them the English and Spanish instructions to help the little ones. And that worked out. And then the test was in, for English words. So, and for some of them, we didn't do the nonsense words. We didn't do those tests. We did letter recognition.
Right.
There were we have 3 tests. I have to remember what they were. But the students, some of them, and some of them have tutors at home who teach them English. Again, we're talking socioeconomics. And some of them are there on scholarship. It's a private
100%
school.
scholarship.
Right.
100%. The gardener's
And-
daughter, the cooks.
Right, and they have none. Like, they've never seen an English book in their lives. No idea.
So before giving the DIBELS, we had 5 or 6 questions. Where do you go on vacation? Huge. Right? The ones who go to Disney World and the ones that go visit their grandmother. Do you have any pencils and papers at home? Huge. No, my mom's a cook. Do you have any books at home? So we got, even before giving the DIBELS,
What do you
we
like to
got,
play?
what do you like to play?
Oh, video
You know?
games, oh no, sticks.
I have a little,
on the floor.
is it like a marble game or with
Yeah, I
cats,
can't
whatever,
remember
so
the
it was
name
a
of it.
huge, yeah. So we knew that one of the problems here is that the school, absolutely wonderful that they have all inclusive. You're blind, you're coming in. You have Down syndrome, you're coming in. Doesn't matter. Everyone's welcome. But also everyone's welcome socioeconomically, right? We have these 20-something% full scholarships. They have different needs. And in Panama, you have a disability, you bring
The tutor to
the
the school.
tutor to the school.
Yes.
Right. So Yay, the family that had the blind, she was one of triplets and one of them was blind, her tutor not only served her, because of course she also had another tutor at home, but she was a classroom
Helping
aide,
other
right?
students too.
And someone else comes in with cerebral palsy and whatever from the gardener's daughter, and the school has no accommodation work. Your heart can be huge, but you have to know both ESOL and special ed. And you see the difference between when we assessed special ed immediately, like, okay, here's data, we have different groups, but when they weren't assessing for ESOL, and they had a bad ESOL program making an assumption, which was an erroneous assumption, that everybody by third grade knew English, and that all you need to know is third grade English, and then you'll just learn
You'll be
English
fine.
along with everybody else in a classroom. So,
Lots
what
going
we
on.
did. Yeah.
Lots going
Yeah.
on.
and the look
Yes.
was small.
Sorry, I love
That's okay.
So about it. Did you at some point encourage like co-teaching and
Yes.
collaboration?
Yes, but that is a very difficult concept when it's not taught at universities
Right.
and teachers aren't trained.
Yeah.
And as we've spoken, I think we were in Carrie's and Elizabeth's presentation, I mentioned that that's something that I really hope that we work on as universities across the world and our trainings and examples. I mean, even where we are, it's a struggle because teachers like their silos. We say they like to be, this is my classroom, this is my mind, don't tell me anything. And we know that that's not best for children. So just switch the mindset to know the focus is on the child. So if I need Anna to come in and help with something, or if I need to collaborate with Elizabeth or Terry, whoever, I'm going to do that so that the child is getting what they need in all their classrooms. One of the things we teach also in the United States, and not everywhere, is that team teaching, so that I'm teaching, you're teaching reading, writing, math, and science perhaps, and those teachers as a team will collaborate on units so the students are hearing the same language in math, science, history, and English.
Well, like you said, even the university level is such a challenge.
Oh, I
Because you
know.
have different departments and departments aren't collaborating.
No, because they feel like they're little kingdoms and we need to break
Well,
those.
I mean, I think it's mostly administration.
Of course.
It's Universities, because they're, the first thing they'll say is who's getting credit for that.
That's right.
That's right.
And
Where's the money?
Where's the money going?
Right, where's the money? It all comes down to money. Yeah.
So they just, remember, they were teaching collaboratively, they were testing
Yeah.
collaboratively. No, not one of our teacher candidates worked alone.
Right.
Ever.
And they didn't like it in the beginning, just like when they give a group project. And I said, I don't, there's a whole,
I don't
I have a
know
whole
the metric
series on
system. I don't wanna
collaboration.
use the metric system. When in Panama, we're using the metric system.
Right, then there's the cultural issues you deal with as well, your cultural lens.
But the group would help and say, well, we're teaching the metric system, so
Right.
you can just be quiet during this lesson, right?
And I'll do this part,
Yeah.
right?
All right.
Have some good lunch. Thank you. Lunch. Who doesn't love a good nosh? My computer died 100%. And I was supposed to use it, so that's why we were. That's what happens. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no, I love it. And I noticed that it was intentional. You used almost all the language practices.
What is that right? I write out for CEC. One of my books, Catherine Martin and I wrote a book. Survival Guide. Yeah, and so we're gonna add on the HLPs next. Oh my goodness, thank you for that. So yeah. But yeah, our global program was fabulous. Now we're kind of going through roads. Because our people left, our really good program director left.
Not even every first people to understand. Everyone got to come there for 5 days. Oh, I think one
And
or
our
two
tour chairs, they're not,
were
service learning, they were engaged. And I've tried with the university and they've
no,
given me a lot of pushback, so I'm like,
if they-
fine, whatever they feel like. We do it ourselves, like you
really
can't
good
do
English,
something.
so
If I say I'm gonna be a panelist, but
want
I'm
to
not,
get everybody with the
I'm not
right,
fine.
and then
I'll
everybody who
coordinate
is
everything for you.
not good
I'll
at
be a
English
driver,
gets
I'll
the
engage the
And then
school.
by that time,
So that's what we did
by
last
nature,
year.
I mean, they were